Hello comic book guys and gals, and welcome to Comic Mag Musings. I am your host, Bill Miller. So I have a very exciting video for you today. We have 5 low-key, undervalued spec books on the cheap. Books that you can pick up right now as of June of 2021 for very little money that I think has some upside and might be worth a gamble. So let's take a look and dig in, shall we? First, we have The Amazing Spider-Man Annual, number 25. It's from 1991, and this contains the first solo Venom story. You can get a high-grade copy of this between $5 and $10 on Electronic Bay. So very affordable. You might be able to even find them in dollar boxes at your local LCS. Now, LCS is local comic book shop. So local comic book shop. But I think Venom's becoming a more and more popular character. And depending on how the second Venom movie does, it might pull even more fans into comic books who are interested in Venom. And they might start searching out some of the early stories of Venom, some of the bigger keys, and want to kind of put together a Venom collection. So I see there's a possibility of a slow, steady climb with that book in particular. Something to look out for. All right. The second one, we have Namor the Submariner, number 1. This is from 1990, and this is the premiere issue of this particular series. Again, you can get high-grade copies of this book for between $5 and $10 on eBay fairly easily. Obviously, his first Golden Age appearance is pretty expensive. First Silver Age is in FF number 4. Those are pretty darn expensive. As is his one-shot with Iron Man and his Silver Age series, Submariner number 1. So I think this might be a good alternative when people are priced out of all of those to jump to this one, especially when there's been a casting announcement recently for the Submariner. I think he might be appearing in the second Black Panther movie. But I see those keys becoming even more expensive and difficult for people to afford. I think this is a good alternative. Plus, you're getting a lot of people coming of age who are becoming interested in investing comics, who were young and maybe first reading comics in the late 80s through the 90s. And so for many of them, this could be the Namor that they're more familiar with. So a book to take a chance on, I think. Be on the lookout for Namor the Submariner number 1 from the 90s run. All right, third, a book that I'm very big on. And obviously I have all of these, and I'm not selling any of them. So there's no personal gain in me pimping any of these books. This is the Micronauts number 1. Wonderful, wonderful Bill Mantlo series. Ran for over 70 issues. I read all of them. This is the first comic I ever remember buying and reading. So it always holds a special place in my heart, but it's such a fantastic series, and it's based on a Japanese toy line. 1974, Takara came out with the Microman toys because they were the world was going through a fuel crisis at that point in time, and so plastic's a byproduct of the production of fuel, and so plastic was becoming more expensive, and the traditional action figures were 12-inch. In addition to that, Japan is a very, very small country, and there's a premium on room, space, living quarters. And so they said, well, if we make 3.75-inch action figures versus 12-inch ones, we can reduce costs because of the rising cost of fuel and plastics that are manufactured from that. And it's not as big of an imposition for Japanese households to have smaller toys there. So that was the impetus behind creating the Microman series. And then Mego in '76 licensed it for the US and some other parts of the world as well. And they had the toy line from '76 to 1980. They later went bankrupt in 1982, but not because of Micronauts. They made plenty of money on Micronauts. But many of their toys were just repackaged Microman toys. But some of them, they had new head molds created. Others, they created new characters from scratch. So there's been a lot of talk over the last couple decades of getting a Micronauts either animated TV show or movie in the works, with different scripts being written. Paramount had interest at one time. I certainly think that there are some licensing issues. And I don't know how that's involved, whether whomever owns the license for the toy also owns the license for whatever's written in any of the canon of the comic books, because this really fleshed out the whole world. So if they're going to make something, it would come from, this would be the source material for it. But it's such a good story, has so many possibilities, that I don't see how they can't make some sort of TV show or movie out of this. These are a little bit more expensive. You can get a VF Plus to a near mint minus for $20 to $30 in that range on eBay. But a great read nonetheless. So that's Micronauts #1. For our fourth book, we have The Warlock Chronicles #1. This is from 1993, the premiere issue, and this is an Infinity Crusade crossover. So Warlock is becoming a very hot character, right? Fantastic Four 66, 67, Thor 163 through 166, Marvel Premiere #1. Warlock even had his own short-lived series, I think, in like 73 or 74. But those books are becoming really hot, really expensive. I think this might be a good alternative, because I do see him showing up in the MCU in the not-too-distant future. It seems that they want to take a cosmic turn, and he would make all the sense in the world to be featured in several movies going forward. So this is a relatively inexpensive comic book. You can get these $5 to $10 all day on eBay for high-grade copies. And so if those other ones get too expensive, they're going to price out a lot of people. And this might be something that folks decide to settle on and say, hey, you know what? Let me just grab this Warlock #1, and I'll be cool with that. So I think there's a lot of upside for that one. And lastly, we have American Vampire #1. Really, really good series. I read the first 3, I think, maybe 4 trades of this. Really good. It's about vampires and different species of vampires, and how they have either coexisted or been in conflict with one another throughout different periods in history. Really enjoyable. Stephen King helped flesh it out and write the first 5 issues, I believe. And then, who's it? Albuquerque and Scott Snyder. Albuquerque with the art and Snyder with the writing from that point, issue 6 by himself forward. But this is a or was a Vertigo series from 2010. This is the A cover, and there were a couple different printings. I think second printing has like blue instead of red. So this is the first printing. You can get high-grade examples of the first printing on eBay for between $10 and $20. So a relatively, again, inexpensive book. None of these books are terribly expensive. Micronauts being the most at $20 to $30 for a high-grade copy. They talked about, because Vertigo went away in 2020, so they talked about continuing this series with DC Black Label. I don't believe that's come to fruition yet, but this is a perfect property, especially having Stephen King's name attached to it for the first few issues, to be made into a television show. I think there's probably too much material, and it's probably too slow of a pace to be as effective as a movie, but a television show, I could certainly see that, and I can see it doing well. So those are my 5 low-key spec book picks on the cheap. Again, we have American Vampire, #1 from 2010. Warlock Chronicles, #1 from 1993. Micronauts, #1 from 1979, I believe. It might be 78, but I believe it's 79. Namor the Submariner, #1 from 1990. And The Amazing Spider-Man Annual, #25 from 1991. I hope you enjoyed seeing those, and if you did, I would encourage you to subscribe and click that notification bell so that you're alerted when I release new videos. Thumbs up and comments are always appreciated. And remember, we're taking over the world one comic book at a time.